because we realized very quickly that if we want to change something, it's not just us saying, oh, well, we've become environmentally sustainable. We can only do this when we actually work with everybody that we work with. And I think that is also, within the industry, the big question: how can we improve that collaboration to become really sustainable?
Good afternoon, everybody. It's 2 o'clock. We're in Switzerland, and we start on time. So I'm really delighted to welcome all of you here to what I hope is going to be an interesting discussion today. I'm Susan Newman-Baudet. I'm the Executive Director of Eurimage, co-production fund. But what we're here to discuss today is, as you can see on the screen, moving towards a sustainable European film industry. Now, just to clear the mystery right away, there's one word in there that is not shown on screen that gives you the key to what we're going to do today. And that is the word environmentally sustainable. That's the question we're going to address today. We're all here together at Locarno. We're all cinema enthusiasts. And I think we all know that we're at quite a pivotal moment in our industry. There are many challenges facing us. They're economic, they're political, they're creative. There are many things we need to think about. But we also need to think about the environmental sustainability of what we do as a film industry. So today we're going to explore that, and in particular think about how we do that without compromising artistic vision or indeed economic viability. So joining me to unravel that issue today are 4 very distinguished guests who I'm delighted to have with me. We have Fabienne Merlet, who is the Sustainability Officer of the Locarno Film Festival. So thank you for joining us. Patrizia Pesco, who's the head of funding at the Federal Office for Culture, the cinema section. Thank you. And so they will provide the festival and Swiss insights today. And on a European level, we have Matthias Wouternol. He's the CEO and director of the European Film Academy. And in a shameful bit of self-promotion, for which I hope you'll forgive me, I have with me my colleague, Thierry Hugo, program manager at Eurimage, who takes a particular interest and guides our small group working on sustainability issues at the fund. So let's dive in. There's a lot to talk about, but let's start off with some quite Swiss-focused and in particular festival-focused questions, because we're here at Locarno, and I, like many other of the festival goers, received a really complete newsletter when we arrived at the festival detailing all of the different environmental protection and eco-friendly initiative that the festival was proposing. So Fabienne, could I start with you? Can you give us some idea, a general overview of everything that the festival is doing and how important it is to you as an organization?
Thank you. Buongiorno a tutti. Well, the reality of an event, of a film festival, is very complex. Festivals pollute, and we cannot say otherwise. And you can multiply this negative impact in a way by thinking of what it means to hold an international film festival in a relatively small city like Locarno, which requires the construction of temporary facilities like this one to accommodate all the activities. And for us, as an event with an open-air screen, which is the heart of the festival, the Piazza Grande, it has always been very important to make a firm commitment to environmental sustainability, because we know that this is the only way we can really ensure that the festival will also continue to be known in the future for, of course, for the films, for the conversation, for the programs, but also for the uniqueness of Piazza Grande, and also for the fact that besides of the films you can see and all the activities you can attend to, there's a very important component, I guess. I know it's very hot today, but the nature, the lake, the mountains that surround us, they contribute in making the Locarno experience truly memorable. And that is also why we are firmly committed to well, first of all, understand how we can reduce our emissions, how we can then reevaluate and reassess all the processes and the organizational cycles, and then in the end also strengthen strategic partnerships to achieve this goal. Because all the measures that you could read in the newsletter, they are done collectively in partnerships and in synergies with all the entities involved, especially our partners.
A little follow-on question, Fabienne. How do the festival goers themselves receive these measures? Do you get feedback? Is there good uptake on trying to, for example, move around the festival venues in an ecological way? Or simple things like recycling and drinking water, all of these measures. Do you get good uptake? Is there an enthusiasm for this?
Well, I should pass the microphone to you all to answer that question. But of course, it's a journey. It's not one we can take alone. And the feedbacks we've got to this stage is very positive. And some of the, we just did the GHG inventory last year, which identified scope 3, meaning, I don't want to be too technical, but the indirect emissions where we impact the most is really the transport of the people coming to Locarno. And we are trying to address the issue by, for instance, now with all passes and tickets, you have free public transportation throughout Ticino and Moesano. This is a first step. We have shuttles that are electric that can move you from one venue to the other. Those are little steps because they also cost lots of money. We have to be honest, but we know how important it is. So it's really something that we have to do jointly. It's important for us to raise awareness, to do our part, but also to ask the audience to, when possible, come to the festival and behave, let's say, in an environmentally friendly way. Because just if I can add something, we had this morning a cleanup action, the first one, and it's incredible to know how difficult still it is for people to understand how to correctly separate waste. Something that should be obvious in a way, but it is not. So little steps also as a festival goers on how you can be more environmentally sustainable also when attending a festival.
So we get the message indeed that it's incremental steps and constant encouragement and assistance, and providing the ways to do it is the way forward. It's a strategic goal, I imagine, because it's part of the image of the festival that you are green as well. But if we come now to Patrizia, you are working in the body that's responsible for most of the film funding in Switzerland, together with the regional film funding that exists. But you also have a role in devising and thinking and accompanying the film industry in policy matters. So what is the thinking currently? Where are you in thinking about these issues?
So we clearly are thinking about the issue since many years. We make a lot of co-production, so we observe what our neighbor countries are doing. Germany and Austria are very forward, and France is coming too. So we started discussions on national level 3 or 4 years ago, and we have developed, not my office, but in Switzerland there was a carbon calculator developed especially for Switzerland in Swiss francs, and we will introduce measures on a national level with the next law, the next film law, which will start in 26. But on a regional level, the Zurich Foundation has already started to ask for carbon calculations to give in a project, and for the presence of a green manager on the film sets for bigger productions. And we, as national funding, we have bonus points for green production concepts on minority co-productions. Since it's already a practice in the most European countries, we started with that, which was easy to apply. And yes, we will introduce surely something in 26 on a national level.
And in your discussions with the production community, is it an issue that comes to the fore often, brought by you, or rather by the producers?
No, it's coming rather from us and from some enthusiast green production managers, because we have a formation, a training since 2 years at the 4 Swiss green production managers, and they're gathered in an association, and they are very proactive, and we are working also with them to. But it's more on the institutional side that the input is coming.
And do you need to coordinate this work with the funds in regions, for example?
Yes. Yes. We absolutely want to have the same criteria for national and regional level, since it's already a burden, perceived as a burden for producers. So we don't want to add another burden to make different calculations for national or regional level. So no.
Yes, because indeed, I mentioned the many challenges the industry faced at the start of the discussion. This should not be perceived as a burden. I think all of the institutions need to try to accompany the producers and all of the different parts of the industry in achieving this. We need to move forward, but we need to accompany as best we can as well. If I may perhaps turn now to Matthias. The European Film Academy, of course, has many activities, but you're best known for the European Film Awards, which some of you may have attended. How do you address these issues in thinking about the work of the Academy?
I hope this is on. Yeah, it is. It was just mentioned if it's a burden or not. I mean, it does feel a bit as a burden, to be honest, because obviously I think we're all aware that in the industry in which we have to take the responsibility to do something. When it comes to film production, it's a different question. And if you work for an organization like the European Film Academy, what can you do? So I think especially during the pandemic, at the European Film Academy, we started asking, was also a good time to ask these questions because many things were not taking place. And we said, well, if they start happening again and if events start taking place, how can we change them into a more sustainable format or formats? So that ranges, of course, to a lot of questions about like how do we work, how do we send things, which kind of partners do we work with? Because we realized very quickly that if we want to change something, it's not just us saying, oh, well, we've become environmentally sustainable. We can only do this when we actually work with everybody that we work with. And I think that is also within the industry, the big question, how can we improve that collaboration to become really sustainable? So we define 3 areas in which we'd like to become more sustainable. One of it is the daily operations, choices we make, the traveling, what kind of materials, what kind of partners, and so on and so on. What kind of digital infrastructure we also choose, because I think very often it's about materials we think we can sort of touch, but I think also when it comes to the digital infrastructure that we use, sustainable choices can be made. Second thing is the events we organize. So you already mentioned the European Film Awards. Like a festival, you can say, well, most sustainable thing would be we don't do it anymore because we will create a lot of less waste and we will not ask people to travel and so on. But of course, the industry would not work the same way, and I think we need these events as well, and nothing is wrong with traveling per se. So we are still working, and I will admit very fast, like you also said, we're in a process of making these kind of huge events more sustainable together with the local partners we work with, or together with the teams we work with as well. And I think every year we have taken some steps. I can say a bit more also about the Lucerne event that we will have this year, because the European Film Awards will be in Switzerland this year, which is of course a big event. And from the beginning, it has been quite an important part also of the setup of the project and the talks we had with the BAC here in Switzerland as well, to say, well, it needs to be an event where we can see that improvements have been made when it comes to sustainability. And the third thing is that we said, well, we don't want to just organize one big event in one weekend and then spend millions of euros on making that event a success. We want to make it an event where people all over Europe can benefit from. So we started thinking about a different way about how we can celebrate European cinema, not only one show in one room, but in the meantime, European Film Awards connected to a month of European film, which takes place in 100 cities all over Europe. So that makes it also more sustainable.
Can I just grasp the provocation you just said about not having film festival? Of course, that's something we always say when we say if we wanted to be climate neutral, we can just close the doors. But there's also, I guess, a very important social and economic dimension that we must not forget when we speak about sustainability as an holistic thing. Just
I agree. I mean, that's also
I know.
why I'm here. So I'm very happy you took that decision not to cancel.
Well, and I think it's really been underlined the necessity of festivals and events to make our industry function correctly in the way it does. And it's quite clear that there is a choice to be made, but a balance has to be found. And this is the tightrope that's being walked at the moment. Another area that is a little bit of a tightrope is that of film co-productions, because here in our discussion with Fabienne and Matthias, we've been looking at events. How do you make an event sustainable? And what I think the message here is very much that you plan right from the very start with your partners about how to do it correctly. And you start, no doubt, from a base, and probably we'll come back to this afterwards, and you need to measure your progress towards a goal. If we look rather at the production side, we're in a different kind of conundrum. And I'm going to use this to rebound towards my colleague Thierry, because obviously, as a European fund, as an international fund, Eurimage has a footprint over almost all of Europe and Canada. These are co-productions. What can Eurimage do in terms of encouraging a green approach on the part of producers applying to the fund?
Well, good afternoon. Well, it's as for film festivals, we have the same contradiction, because we try to foster international co-production and international cooperation. So we have per se kind of ambiguity in what we do. Also concerning Eurimage, we are an international fund, so we come above or in addition to the national funding. So this creates also some difficulties. It's already very difficult to prepare an application for Eurimage funding. So we always take care of not adding additional bureaucracy. And in this case, it can be very difficult for producers if we impose other requirements or other standards than what are in place at a national level. So this is one of the first difficulty, and also we have 39 member states with a very different situation in terms of policy for sustainable, not only sustainability, not only in the audiovisual sector, but in many sectors. You don't have the same infrastructure in the member states, so. If we impose very strict measures, we have the risk to exclude a lot of projects, and some projects coming from particular countries, to exclude them from any support from Eurimage. So what we decided to do as a first step in this direction is first to work on training. So we started a project to build an online learning platform on the sustainable film production. We have selected recently the French association EcoProd to develop this project with us. And really the idea is to not only raise awareness, but to provide the basic and the basic knowledge for not only producers but all the crew members in a film production, so that, for instance, when the green managers arrive on set, they don't have to preach the Bible again, and everybody's aware of what has to be done. So this is the first step, and we hope to be able to launch this platform at the beginning of next year, hopefully. And it will be, of course, enriched with time. And the second main measures we took is to add an additional selection criteria in the co-production support scheme. So we already have 6 selection criteria on artistic, technical, and financial matters. And we added, it's now the second year, a criteria to evaluate measures put in place by the producers, to have a more sustainable film production. It's a criteria which is assessed by the panel of experts, which are always assessing the film projects at Eurimage. And of course, at this stage, it's not an eligibility requirement. So producers can still apply and get funded, even if they don't have measures in place. But it's a kind of plus, or it's not a bonus because it does not come with additional money. But it's when two projects are ranked equally, it will advantage the production who has put in place measures. So that's more or less it for the moment. But of course, in the future, we can envisage to have other measures or maybe stricter measures.
Thank you very much, Thierry. I mean, what comes from having any measure of the type that Thierry has mentioned is the fact that you can actually collect information on what's actually being done. So Fabienne, you mentioned that you had done a measure of the greenhouse gas emissions and studied that. Matthias, I suppose you have goals. How difficult is measuring your progress and making sure that the entire organizational team is on board, because everybody needs to be moving in the same direction? Are there challenges there, Matthias? Perhaps I could come to you and then to Fabienne.
Yeah, a lot. I mean, we 2 years ago we had the European Film Awards in Reykjavik, and also the Icelandics pride themselves in being the most sustainable country of Europe, which is true, and it's also a bit unfair because a lot of their things in their national infrastructure are automatically sustainable when it comes to energy providing and so on, for example. So the numbers were a bit unfair. So it's very hard and very unfavorable to compare after Reykjavik. So there was, in a way, a good start and not such a good start for us. But it forced us also to say, well, how can we do better? I mean, I think, first of all, creating data and collecting data basically after each event, in this case, is crucial, because otherwise you can't compare. But the trick is, what do you measure and how do you measure it? And as it was mentioned, of course, when we're talking about European film industry, the differences, but also the possibilities to do and to implement sustainable measures in European countries are tremendously different. I mean, Germany was mentioned, other countries in Western Europe are taking, on a higher political level, quite some changes and decisions to improve things. But in the majority of Europe, and including also lots of southern, but mostly also Eastern European countries, it's not the case at all. And also social awareness for this much lower. So the challenges are absolutely there. I think to make sure, as you said, to make sure that you say, well, we have the intention and we want to do in a specific amount of time, and I would say, don't make it 20 years, but maybe 5 years. We want to have this, and this improved. And what can we do already? And I think motivating a team. I mean, what we did a couple of years ago said we hire somebody who is specifically in charge of, with everything we do in the European Film Academy, is in charge of thinking on the sustainability side of it, whether it's young audiences, activities, the film awards, but also the organization throughout the year. And it helps us a lot because it does give the space within the team as well to say, what can we do? Somebody will take up on it as well, because the rest is busy with the rest of their jobs. And to motivate and to also agree on aims and goals that you can have. And to give one or two examples, we agreed on saying, well, when we fly people in to our event, we compensate the carbon emissions that we create ourselves. And we reserve a part of our budget to basically spend that on a project that is investing in on a local base, and in this case we found a great project together with the Lucerne colleagues to invest in a project that is taking place in Lucerne. It's called Water for Water, Wasser für Wasser, where we support a local sustainability project, and we spent that budget there after the awards. Yeah.
Thank you very much for that. It's because as soon as you mentioned compensation, I'm sure that many of the members of the public thought about all of the controversy that and questions that have been raised about the real value of carbon compensation schemes. And it's really nice to hear that you have found a way of doing it very directly to ensure that the compensation happens in a good and valuable way. Fabian, if I could come to you, because you mentioned that you do study, collect information, and look at where you are. I wonder, do you benchmark yourselves against other festivals? Do you share best practice? Is there exchange on this? Or is it each festival for themselves?
I mean, we're not a lonely island, or at least we shouldn't be. So, of course, there's a constant exchange. Just this morning, I was with my colleagues of the Conférence des Festivals, which is a collective that reunites film festivals in Switzerland, and one of the main topics was how to improve our sustainability strategy. We do the same within the Swiss Top Events, where we also signed a charter for sustainability, where we shared our commitment. We do the same with the FIAP. So then, of course, every event, every country, every culture has its own peculiarity. But for us, it's very essential to foster the promotion of a communication, an open communication in the best case, and sharing ideas, because that's the only way that we can collectively move forward.
Please.
Can I ask something? Because I'm always wondering when it comes to the festivals and so on, and we're talking about working together with partners. Now you have these like wonderful bottles for water, which I'm sure is sustainable material. But
yeah, I wanted to do some product placement. Sorry.
Very good, a very nice one. I just wonder every time I come at a festival. I'm not talking about Locarno specifically, but I keep wondering why people are talking about sustainability at festivals all over Europe, and you keep attending festivals where you get a lot of things that I throw away straight away in my hotel room. Can we stop doing that? Because I think that really doesn't help anything. Again, this is not only Locarno, but many festivals. And this is also about telling partners to say, like, I love your notebook, I love your pen, I love your anything, but it's all thrown away. So why do we get this? Is this something we can ask to the federation or to any festivals that talk together to say, let's just decide that we stop that? Or is that very rude to ask?
No, that's very interesting because, of course, perception is reality. We all know that. But by doing the GHG inventory, I mean, we need to keep working on reducing printed materials, decoration, and all that stuff. But the impact, the overall impact, is less than 0.1%. So very good to diminish it. We diminished the printed publication by 33% this year, for instance. But if we really talk about numbers, about emission, about impact, it's not relevant. But I can take this comment back to my communication team.
Well, maybe to calm down things a little bit, I'm going to come to Thierry, because Eurimage is also, obviously, we're involved in many festivals, we're present, and one of the things we always provided are what we called goodies. So little gifts that we handed out. And we, in Globe, we also commissioned a study to look at our GHG emissions, and there were some interesting findings there, which a little bit reflect what Fabian had said. Thierry, maybe you'd like to say a word?
Yeah, we also did carbon emission calculation in 2022, and it's more or less yes the same conclusion. We stopped doing goodies, for instance, but our main emissions are due to traveling. So we don't produce anything. We are producing contracts, but not something tangible. So yes, the main emissions are traveling and procurement when we buy or use computers and smartphones, more or less. So by having the maintenance of these IT systems extended for 2 years instead of 4, now we have 6. Then it's already a big improvement in terms of carbon emissions. But yes, the main problem remains the travel, and goodies are more symbolic in a sense.
Pritya, could I just rebound on something that Fabian said, because there's a coordination of festivals, they talk together about these issues. As a funder and a policy organization, do you have a way of coordinating with other funds and policies that might be existing in other countries that have been mentioned?
Yes, well, we have bilateral and trilateral agreements, co-production agreements with different countries in Europe. And as you said, traveling is one of the most heaviest factors. So we are thinking, we are starting to discuss the possibility of take out some expense obligations from these co-production treaties, because now if you make a co-production with Germany and Switzerland, a German majority co-producer has to shoot 5 days for a fiction film in Switzerland. And that means you have to take all the crew members and travel and take hotels in Switzerland. And so this has an economical reason and a political reason, but it's in contradiction with the environmental criteria. So we started this discussion and see if we can find a solution to avoid these paradoxical situations where you create pollution just because the treaty says you have to shoot 5 days in Switzerland.
That, I think, will be, it's an absolutely critical issue, but it's also going to be a very long and very complex, because it involves fine-tuning national policy across numerous countries and reconciling perhaps different objectives for funding and different ways of doing things. But it's certainly very promising and interesting to hear that you actually have started to think about these things.
And I just wanted to say we don't yet have data on national level, so that's why I am pleased that Zurich already started to collect data, and that we will start too in 26, because, as you said, it's important to have data to develop a policy.
Yes, just to mention that regarding international co-production, one of the very first case study we had at Eurimage of more sustainable film production was a project shot actually during COVID. So I think they were planning to shoot in Norway and bringing an entire French crew in Norway. But because of COVID, they had to find a crew there. And then, in the end, they could raise a small amount of money from Norway because they traveled less from France and had more people there. So I think it's a good, it's a nice example of what could be done for international co-production. And the second point is also regarding international cooperation. That's what we try to do with the Eurimage Sustainability Study Group, but there are other groups in Cineregio or in the EFATS working the same way. And indeed, a lot of public funds are eager to exchange ideas, to see how we can combine what we are doing. So that's a really important point, and we hope to be able to work on that more in the next years.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I had a question when you mentioned before, Thierry, the platform that you're making with an overview of the project, which is run or made by EcoProd, you said. Is that focusing, I guess, on Eurimage-funded projects, or is it broader?
No, it's meant to be broader. It's focusing on international co-production or international cooperation. But it's really open to. It will be open to anyone interested in the subject. So it's still a new project. We just launched it before the summer. So and we plan to have several modules in place. So the first one will be launched in the beginning of next year with, I would say, more standard and basic information. But with time, we hope to enrich it with more specific information. And it could, for the moment, it's really focused on production, but it could be also on other subject matters related to films, of course. So be that event organization or distribution, anything that could be of interest. But it's really meant to be used by as many film professionals as possible.
I'm asking, if you allow me, because I'm very happy to hear, because I think that overview is lacking in many ways in Europe. So it's very hard to find out which films and so on and so on. And to give an example, because I remember that we addressed it at some point when we spoke a little bit before, we at the European Film Academy started a European Sustainability Award in 2022 in Reykjavik. And we said, like, this is going to be the award. We're going to give awards to the most sustainable project or initiative or person that really drives sustainability forward, because we all want that to happen. And I can tell you, we stopped giving that award because we can't find a person. We gave it to Ursula von der Leyen 2 years ago. It was just before she took a plane for I think, half an hour to go to a very little event, and we were like, oops. Last year we had great winners. Last year we had a great winner, but we made it much more than environmental sustainability because we couldn't find anybody in Europe that deserved a prize for what they're doing. It's pretty sad if you think about it, actually. There's nobody that you feel like a stage, a spotlight, an award. It just doesn't feel big enough. It's very regional, it's small. Amazing initiatives on a smaller level, I would say. So I think a project like this, it gives an overview of what's happening where, who's doing what. Not for the prize, because the aim is not to have an award. I think in the meantime, we also don't want to give awards to people doing sustainability because we want something else. But to have the overview will be incredibly helpful. So thank you.
But you know, we get to that by doing mistakes. So we also had the project to have a green awards or some kind of green awards, and we came to the same conclusion. And actually, when we talk to producers, the first question is where should we start? So that's why we came up with this idea of training, because that's the first help we can give to the producers or the film professionals. And then once they know where to start, they will ask for money, of course. So maybe not awards, but having additional money or taking this aspect into account in the money we already give. So it's. But training really seemed to us the first step, and again we made the same mistakes before doing that. So that's practice.
But I think we all learn by our mistakes. That's the way it goes. But so we've heard that a difficulty, a challenge when it came for a prize at the European Film Awards. The Eurimage initiative didn't quite work out the way we hoped, but there is a very successful initiative along this line. And here I invite Fabienne to say something about this, because Locarno has something rather special in this regard.
Yeah, we have a green award, that's true.
How's it going?
It's going pretty well. No, we divide the two aspects. So one is raising awareness, and the other is the production fund, which is still not in place in Locarno. But yeah, we teamed up several years ago with WWF to create this award, the Pardo Verde, which is a transversal award to all the sections. And the aim there, it was not to change the production system, but really to raise awareness on topics, on environmental topics. And we know that we are not a thematic film festival. We do not choose films based on their topics. But and that was already very interesting to know, because we felt that these stories are increasingly being told by filmmakers, and maybe because they always capture the spirit of time, they anticipate it, so it was not an issue for the selection committee, or maybe I shouldn't speak from their side, but at least we have a selection, so at the end we achieved that. But that's just the visible part of a bigger picture that would be the real project. And I also now had some ideas of partnering up with you after hearing that, because the bigger project would be really the Locarno Green Film Fund, which would be a fund that would let's say support movies that are produced based on green standards. But it was so hard, and it's still so hard to have those standards, and you could be the solution to it. To be realized. So that would really promote a positive change throughout the entire production cycle. So we would have the Pardo Verde, which is still also important for the audience because it raises awareness on topics that are very important. The first year the winner was Matter Out of Place by Nicolas Geerhalter. I think you won't use any plastic bottles or anything in plastic after seeing that movie. So it's really a powerful tool. But yeah, let's talk after this panel to understand if the Green Film Fund could be realized also in collaboration with you, with Eurimage.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a lot of pressure on us. No, I think when we are talking about the Green Awards, I think there is a difference between the subject of the film and technically how it's done. And the technical side is indeed very difficult to check. And also we have all examples of films which have environmental subject, which is very nice. But then when you dig into it, you end up with Ursula von der Leyen flying for 30 minutes. So that's the difficulty, in fact, in the end.
But Thierry, if I may ask you, because I do know the answer, it is difficult to identify the films that are actually putting into practice various, notably carbon calculators and green certification of some sort. Because Eurimage has criteria about this in the selection. You can give us perhaps some information about how many films did actually use these measures?
Yeah, I have the numbers
Sorry
here
for
on
the
paper
stats.
because I don't know them by heart. If you're interested to have these numbers, they are actually available on our website, so self-promotion again, in our activity report of last year. So you have everything there. So yes, we gather some information on the film project, but contrary to maybe national funds, for instance, we ask producers if they use a carbon calculator, on which one, but we don't ask for the numbers, at least for the moment, because we wouldn't do anything with it, in fact. And for instance, we would get a number for one side of the co-production and another from another side, maybe with different calculators. So it would not make a lot of sense to aggregate everything. But the fact that they use a calculator or the fact that they use a label or a certification is already a kind of proof that they are really implementing things in their project. So in terms of number, I'm talking about the films which are eligible for the co-production funding. So in 2023, we had more than 300 films which were eligible for the production funding, and 55% declared that they use a carbon calculator. As regard a green certificate or label, it was far less, so around 17% were using planning to have a certification. And 43% were saying they had hired a green consultant. And one last element, which is maybe interesting also, coming back to the discussion on the green paradox, is that 9% of the producers declared that 9% of the film, for the film funded, I mean this time, declared that the film had an environmental or topic or topics relating to sustainability. So it's still a declaration. So of course it's very difficult for us to verify this. But at the moment it's not a big part of the project, but still representing almost 10%.
Personally, I find that relatively encouraging in terms of the number of projects that, okay, it's clear that the projects coming to Eurimage are just a small subset of all of the projects in Europe, but at least in our back garden, so to speak, it's relatively encouraging. Maybe turning to something a little bit more provocative, because Thierry, you mentioned that 9% of the films had an environmental theme of some sort. Do any of you think, or do you think there's a challenge in implementing green measures, both in production, in festivals, in everything in our industry? Do you think that it can impact in any way negatively or perhaps positively on the artistic quality of what's being done? How do you see it? Is it a trade-off or is it a contribution? Tough question.
Specifically for film productions?
For the quality of the film on screen at the festival, selected at the festival, the fact that it's a green production, it may give extra legs when it comes to actually getting certain kinds of funding. But you think in a future where all of the films will need to be made in this way, do you think that we will be looking at in the longer term having an impact on quality and creativity?
I mean, I believe that limitations normally lead to better creativity, to be honest. So in that sense, I think it's actually a nice challenge. And I mean, I'm sure that in some cases, filmmakers say, well, I had a different plan, but because of this, I had to come up with an alternative plan. The question is if the film becomes worse or much better. It's hard to predict, but I don't think the limitations when it comes to this will lead to worse films. I think in many cases we all see films where we feel like, well, was it worth all this and so on. So I think I don't see it as a problem. The problem at the moment, however, is, and I think that's a more realistic problem, is that to implement green measures, to call it like that, are heavy burdens on production budgets. And I think they impact not only creative choices, but very much like who can you work with, how many shooting days do you have, and which extra costs do you basically have to make to be able to make the film. And this is not only for film production, but this is very much also for events. I'm sure you have this also at the festival. We have it at the European Film Awards. It's the cost for hiring a sustainability officer, as we have. It's part of the budget, and you need to make these choices to say, well, it's important for us, it's a priority, and I hope that will improve, or there will also be support for that.
And I imagine also, Fabienne, or from any of your point of view, that the long-term benefits outweigh the costs that there could be in terms of actually implementing and creativity in any way. Maybe one other question, I don't know if anybody would like to come in on this. In many areas of film production, but also in everything we're doing in our daily lives, we are being told that artificial intelligence could definitely help us to do it quicker, more efficiently, and easier. But of course, there's a downside to that. I mean, could artificial intelligence be something that would allow these tools allow films to be made that, for example, would no longer move to different locations, would be allowed to do things in a different way, and therefore respect environmental criteria, with all the downside of the power consumption of the data centers that power AI. Any thoughts from anybody on that? Perhaps Thierry?
Well, I don't really know the answer. In fact, I think it's a bit early to tell it. I remember back when the digital cinema came, everybody said we will spare a lot of money, and in the end it didn't really happen. So we have to wait and see what's happening. I think it's bringing a lot of improvement possibilities with a lot of downsides. So I don't really have an answer on that, but surely it can help make better scheduling, probably, or things like that, which in case of green production can be useful. But yeah, I don't have the practice to really know at this stage.
I agree with you. I think it's very hard to predict, but I think it's certainly something we could keep a keen eye on to see how it develops and if it for environmental sustainability will really be an improvement. I mean, mentioning before, I think on the resources it requires to be able to use AI, it's very much unenvironmentally sustainable, I would say, at the moment, but who knows how that will change. But I think when it comes to the social sustainability, which is not the topic for today, I think AI can offer a lot of advantages. So I think it's good to follow it and then see what happens.
Does the festival think about these aspects, Fabienne?
Have you been to Piazza Grande yesterday?
Yes.
I think we saw the limits and the challenges of using AI in our daily lives, and also the limits in the ethical part. But of course, it's a topic. Everything that is new, we always look with a sense of fear. But it's something that we need to attentively monitor, understand how it could be included without losing the identity of what we do and the human factor, which I guess for an event that aims of bringing people together, creating discussion and be a platform for it, that can't be replaced, and I hope never.
I hope everybody agrees with you. It's the moment to turn to the human factor here in the room. I wondered whether any questions that we could help you with. I see one here, and then some over there. I think a microphone will be brought to you in a moment. And if maybe you could just mention who you were at the start of your question here.
Hi, I'm Gudula Meinzelt. I'm founder and member of the Green Film Action enthusiast and enthusiastic people here in Switzerland, and I'm green consultant, green film consultant as well, and some producer and so on. I just wanted to draw attention to some initiatives to give awards, for example. I think it's really good in order to draw attention to the measures people can do, and we are all on the way. It's beginning, and it is not that we have to be perfect, but we are on our way. For example, well, in Germany, you may know the Eisvogel competition. You know the giraffe, which is given to advertising producers, and it's not that they can do it perfectly. But it's very important to give ideas how to advance and how to take measures. I think it's important. EcoProd awards as well in Cannes. So I think this is not something we should just say, we are not prepared. It's everything about making or beginning to go. And also, it's Matthijs, what you said. It's important to support green film production on one hand, because it might be there might be costs, but on the other hand, as I am green consultant, I know that we can also be can help to lower some costs. So it's both. We don't have to think only, it's a burden, it's horrible, we need more money, but also you can save money. So it's important not to forget this. Thank you.
Yes, just to rebound on the green awards, I don't say we shouldn't have green awards. I just say that means that the one you mentioned and the green Pardo, of course, it's more important to give the one existing more visibility than creating new ones, which for which we may not have the resources to deal with. In fact, so that's mainly the point on the EcoProd, Eisvogel, Green Pardo. I think if these ones can come up and have more success, then it's even better.
Yeah, I agree. I'm also not against green awards. I think the Pardo Verde is a good example. And I think also when it comes to specific projects, it's great and encouraging to do it. In our case, and I think that is a critical question you should always ask yourself, am I giving the award, me being like responsible in this case for an organization, to give a green image of an organization where I think we could actually do better? And for me, the answer was, together with others, we can do better than just give an award and make the appearance of being green. So we said, like, let's not do the award when it's so hard. Let's put the energy, but also the budget, into green measures that are more useful for the work that we do. And I think if that's the answer, then it's also okay to say, listen, the award was not the best idea. We stop it and we put it in somewhere else. Where in other places, I think the award really puts an attention and creates the right awareness. Yeah.
And has a real encouraging effect. Thank you very much for the encouraging question. If we could take maybe over here, there were some questions.
Yes, the Fosco Rubini producer. I see also the problem of greenwashing. We have first to talk about the relevant measures and the not relevant measures. I think a plastic bottle is not relevant, one more or less. Okay, it's a symbol for something, but it's not relevant. What's relevant is the transportation costs. And I, as a producer making co-production, I have to transport 50 people or 30 people from one country to another, or also in Germany from one region to another region. You mentioned it. And this regulation about the shooting days, this is very important and this is relevant. And this is the biggest footprint that you have in the film business. Not that you have some light more or less on a plastic bottle more or less. And when you start to make all this system about points and not points, so I'm also a producer, I'm not stupid, I make this measure that I have these points, but it's changed nothing. We can change the whole system very quickly and very effective when we go away from these shooting days in the regions. Okay, I see it's complicated, but it's not the right discussion to say we have to make all this measure, and on the other side we accept that we have to make these 20, 10, 5 shooting days in all these regions. So this is for a producer something very strange to are in this kind of contradiction. So we have only to make this political discussion, and when this egoism are away, or we discuss about this egoism, then we can make something effective. And otherwise it's greenwashing.
Just quickly, I agree with you. I am conscious of this challenge. So we will work on this.
And it is a very political question, which goes to the very nature and political support for the funding that exists in different countries. So it is extremely important, and I think that logically and intellectually everybody agrees, but there's so many layers and ramifications behind it. Absolutely. I see another question just behind you there.
Okay, hello, I'm Matthias van Hartz. I'm the Artistic Director of Zürcher Theaterspektakel, which is the biggest performing arts festival in Switzerland. So everything I say concerns more the event side than the production side of what you have been talking about. In theater, it's worse because not only films travel, but lots of people travel internationally. So again, for us, like for you, traveling is the main issue. We just did a recalculation of scope 3 again, and in the end, we found out it was comparatively little. So my first question is to Fabienne, do you have a number of what's the emissions per audience member of the festival? And the second is a remark that I have to the whole discussion, because when we have been working on this for several years, we started to have doubts if it really makes sense to concentrate on our footprint. Depending on how you calculate, the footprint of the whole entertainment business is between 3 and 4% of the total emissions. So maybe it's more interesting to look at our handprint or on what else we could do apart from reducing our footprint, which we certainly have to do, but maybe that's not where the leverage is to create impact.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with you. And we also did a handprint and footprint analysis exactly because of that, because sustainability, environmental sustainability must be a responsibility, but let's say it must be something that we do either way, because it's the way that the future needs to be and has to be. But where we have the greatest impact, also in our case, is for sure the social dimension with the cultural mediation programs, with the training programs, with what we do with all our activities. Our total emission in last year was 10,636 tons of CO2, which, of course, it's still quite hard to compare because there are many other realities that don't publish their results in a transparent way. So it's hard to make comparison, but still, transportation for us was the main. After, secondly, we had the purchase of services and goods. And so also in autumn, we will do an assessment of all the suppliers. We have more than 250, so it will be quite a nice work for the winter time. And there we will try to understand, assess how to improve together. But of course, the focus, where we have the fundamental impact, is in the positive social dimension. But in the environmental one, we still have to do what is required to do, and that will be also mandatory in a few years in order to access funding. That's also something that we don't have to forget. Also, to have public funding, you will have to provide with an inventory. I don't know if I replied to you, but grazie.
Thank you very much, Fabian. I see there's one last question there, just beside again. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you so much for the informative conversation. My name is Ndogozo Mlaba. I'm coming from South Africa, in Johannesburg. And I understand that the conversation is really centered around, I guess, the European film industry. But I actually run a creative non-profit organization where we use art to foster positive change in society. And we do this through a number of programs, including doing film screenings in underprivileged communities and villages to enable access to cinema. and now we're moving into like programs and platforms to kind of have the screenings take place with powered by solar panels so that they can be more mobile, and also that the social issues that are connected to everything that we do. And I'm just curious about how we can, as we exist as just Africans generally, and I just want to hop off the question that the gentleman asked, and just about how, I think the way I understood it is that like there's so many, well, in Africa, there's so many social issues which are interconnected, and I think there's a strategy there that we can use to kind of cover ground and still be socially responsible, and also attack different social issues that are facing these different communities, So I'm very curious of how, I guess, somebody from different parts of the world can get involved in the forums that exist within the European film industry, so that, because I guess it's world climate change, right? And how do we kind of collaborate to make sure that we do make as much impact as possible? Thank you.
Would anybody like to address this question? It's a really interesting one, but Matthias?
No, you're completely right. I mean, we're here very much focusing on our own part of the world, so that's completely true. So thank you for coming and being interested in that. The reality is, of course, that in Europe, with its fine maze of infrastructure in a lot of countries, dealing with the issues, how do we change that? What do we give up? How do we change the infrastructure? So it sort of takes away a bit of the attention. What are actually the challenges in other parts of the world, including, in your case, South Africa and also other African countries? I think if we are working and we do panels like this, it is wise to, I think, at some point to level and to link as well to what answers and solutions are in South America, what answers and solutions are in Southeastern Asia, and so on. Not because the situations are always the same, because they're not. The challenges, the questions are different. But I think, and that's the interesting thing, what I can imagine that could come up, because we are so much embedded in how things are and how we have built the system over the past, I don't know, let's say at least 30 years when it comes to the modern structure of the European film industry, but much longer. When you are in a situation where an industry is much less developed, which is the case in many African countries, South Africa, of course, being a bit of an example, that sometimes the answers can be more easy in some ways with European eyes. So to have that conversation going on with you, and I hope that other festivals also do that more global conversation, would be actually an interesting topic. Like, what are answers found in Southeastern Asia or in Southern Africa or in Northern America? So that's a good point maybe for a next occasion, whether it's in Locarno or somewhere else.
So I think our time is up, but thank you very much for that final question, which allowed us to already think about next year, possibly, or at another festival, and has given us food for thought to remind us that we need to open out and have this wider conversation. But I'd like to thank very, very much indeed our four guests today for your insight, for your information, for your frankness. I hope you've all found this interesting. And I think the message is clear for all of us. I mean, both personally and professionally, we need to remain committed to the goals of a sustainable industry and play our role as best we can. I hope there's been some inspiration here today. There's also some more, let's say, firm guidelines on how to work. And I hope the best practice and ideas that have come forward today will inspire you in your future work. Thank you again to everybody, and thank you all for being here and for listening. Thanks.